Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. In Myanmar, 9 people have been killed by security forces at anti-coup demonstrations in Sagaing, Mandalay and Yangon. At least 30 people have been slain in the unrest following a military takeover on February 1st. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack that killed 3 female media workers in Afghanistan on Tuesday. The women aged between 18 and 20 were shot on their way home from work. The burials took place in Jalalabad after prayer ceremonies. At least 10 rockets have hit a military base in western Iraq that hosts U.S.-led coalition troops. In a tweet, coalition spokesperson Colonel Wayne Murado said Iraqi security forces are leading the response and investigation. Saudi Arabia says only vaccinated pilgrims will be allowed to perform Hajj this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, Brazil has reported a record 1,641 deaths overnight, with the toll crossing 257,000. Here in Pakistan, the virus infected more than 1,300 people and claimed 75 lives in the past 24 hours. Nationwide, the number of deaths has topped 13,000. Globally, there are 2.5 million fatalities and nearly 115 million cases. And in the Pakistan Super League, Karachi Kings beat Peshawar Zalmi by 6 wickets at the National Stadium in Karachi. Half-centuries by Babar Azam and Mohammad Nabi helped Kings chase a target of 189 runs. Quetta Gladiators and Multan Sultans will lock horns at the same venue later in the day. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. We begin in Myanmar, where 9 people have been killed by security forces at anti-coup demonstrations in Sagaing, Mandalay and Yangon. At least 30 people have been slain in the unrest following a military takeover on February 1st. Meanwhile, Myanmar's UN ambassador and the military junta have made rival claims over who represents the country at the United Nations. The UN spokesperson says the ruling military had terminated Kyaw Mo Tun and appointed its deputy Tin Maung Naing. But in a letter to the UN General Assembly, President Kyaw Mo Tun said he is Myanmar's ambassador. The U.S. also says that Myanmar's envoy to the United Nations in New York remains in position. And ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack that killed 3 female media workers in Afghanistan on Tuesday. The women aged between 18 and 20 were shot on their way home from work. Their burials took place in Jalalabad after prayer ceremonies. Local officials say all 3 victims were associated with a local channel, Enikas TV. The same media network lost its prominent journalist Malala Maywand in a similar attack in December last year. The latest violence follows a pattern of attacks targeting security officials, journalists, and judges. ISIS claimed responsibility for some of those attacks. And moving on, vote count for 37 seats of the Senate is underway in Pakistan under the supervision of the electoral body of the country. A total of 78 candidates from across the country are contesting for seats in the upper house of the parliament. All candidates from Punjab province have already been elected unopposed after disqualification or withdrawal of other contestants. Results are expected shortly. Meanwhile, the former Chief Minister of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir has moved the High Court over New Delhi's refusal to issue her passport. In her petition, Mehbooba Mufti said the passport has been denied so far because of the lack of police verification. The former Chief Minister said she has the right to hold a passport as she is a citizen. She also asked the court to take action against those who limited her personal liberty by not responding to her request. In India, farmer unions say their leaders will visit poll-bound states and seek votes in favor of parties contesting against ruling BJP. The unions say they have also decided to expand their campaign across India to widen their support base beyond 3 states. Addressing a rally, a union leader said they will appeal to people to punish the government for bringing anti-farmer laws. Meanwhile, the Maharashtra government is under fire for ordering a probe into tweets by BJP's IT cell on the protest. In Punjab, the ruling Congress party has hailed the chief minister for his stand against the new farm laws. Tens of thousands of farmers continue to stage protests at the border points of New Delhi against contentious reforms. At least 10 rockets have hit a military base in western Iraq that hosts U.S.-led coalition troops. Coalition spokesperson Colonel Wayne Murado said Iraqi security forces are leading the response and investigation. In a tweet, Murado said the rockets hit the Ain al-Assad air base in Al-Anbar Governorate. There were no immediate reports of casualties. The attack marks the first since the U.S. attacked Iran-aligned militia targets along the Iraq-Syria border last week. And moving on, the U.S. has pressed Ethiopia to end hostilities in the northern Tigray region. The State Department says Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in a phone call. Blinken cited a growing number of credible reports of atrocities and human rights violations and abuses. The Secretary of State called for the withdrawal of outside forces from Tigray. He asked that Addis Ababa work with the international community to facilitate an independent probe into the abuses and hold those responsible accountable. He acknowledged Ethiopia's recent announcement of full and unhindered humanitarian access in Tigray. And Russia has accused the U.S. of a hostile anti-Russian lunge after the imposition of new sanctions. Earlier, Washington announced curbs on 7 Russian officials over the alleged poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. In a statement, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said Moscow will retaliate on a reciprocal but not necessarily symmetrical basis. She called the move another blow to the U.S.-Russia ties. Zakharova said all this was just an excuse to continue overt interference in Russia's internal affairs. The spokesperson said the U.S. was free to choose whether it wanted equal dialogue with Russia on a reasonable basis, but said Moscow would not pay attention to any sanctions. And the United States has expressed concern over the possible reprocessing of nuclear fuel for bombs by North Korea. This comes after the International Atomic Energy Agency highlighted Pyongyang's continued nuclear activity. Speaking at a virtual event, head of intelligence for the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Rear Admiral Michael Studman, warned that such activity could raise tensions with Pyongyang. Studman said North Korea's doings could be aimed at getting the Biden administration's attention. He added Pyongyang could use the activity as a bargaining chip to press for sanctions relief. The new U.S. administration is currently conducting a full review of the North Korea policy. And Saudi Arabia says only vaccinated pilgrims will be allowed to perform Hajj this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, Brazil has reported a record 1,641 deaths overnight, with the toll crossing 257,000. Globally, COVID-19 has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected nearly 115 million so far. More on the pandemic in this report.
While the developments in vaccines bring hopes of normalcy, new variants of COVID-19 have got governments mulling the decision to ease restrictions. The UNICEF says more than 168 million children worldwide have had schools completely shut for almost a year, and 214 million students have missed more than 3/4 of in-person learning. Scientists warn a highly transmissible COVID-19 variant that emerged in Brazil and has now been found in at least 20 countries, which can infect people who previously recovered from the disease. Even with such news, the U.S. state of Texas has lifted the mask mandate and declared that it is time to open 100%. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden says the country is on track to have enough vaccines for every adult in the country.
And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May. By the end of May. That's progress, important progress.
In Europe, the uptake of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine in France stood at 24%, well below the country's target of between 80 and 85%. Spain says it will buy 17 million more doses of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine as part of a new deal negotiated by the European Union. Meanwhile, Italy has ordered the closure of all schools in the hardest hit areas and extended curbs on businesses and movement until after Easter. But battling the world's worst surge in cases, the Czech Republic has reluctantly entered a stricter 3-week lockdown.
People are really angry. The leading politicians are breaking the rules which they had themselves designed. And then they are surprised that people with lower IQ are saying that they do not want to adhere to the restrictions when the politicians are not keeping them. The whole problem is in the people governing us.
A coalition of healthcare experts says out of 412 COVID-19 related attacks on medics worldwide, India had the highest number of 128. Meanwhile, Australia says it will seek the support of the Defence Forces in its COVID-19 immunisation drive.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, COVID-19 has claimed 75 more lives and infected nearly 1,400 people in the past 24 hours. This pushes the nationwide death toll over 13,000. Health officials say Pakistan has reported over 583,000 cases since the pandemic began. The health ministry says there are more than 16,000 active cases across the country. So far, over 554,000 people have recovered from the disease. Meanwhile, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Indonesia will be among the biggest recipients of the COVAX vaccine initiative. Islamabad will receive more than 10 million doses before June. And in Pakistan, Qatar Emiri Land Forces commander has lauded the Pakistan Army's sincere efforts for regional peace. Major General Saeed Hassan Mohammad Al-Khayareen called on Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. The two expressed views on the regional security situation and the Afghan peace process. They also discussed matters of mutual interest. The Qatari chief received the Guard of Honor earlier on his arrival and laid a floral wreath at the Martyrs Memorial. And the 4th International Pakistan Army Team Spirit Competition 2021 is underway at the National Counterterrorism Center, Pabbi, near Karya. The 3-day competition is designed to test mental agility and tactical proficiency of the participating teams. The teams have so far participated in the endurance test, hideout occupation, and rehearsed quick tactical level battle drills. Besides 8 domestic teams of the Pakistan Army, teams from 8 allied countries are participating in the competition. Teams from Jordan, Sri Lanka, Turkey, and Uzbekistan are involved as participants, while Morocco, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan are participating as observers. More stories after a short break. Stay with us. We're back. France has asked Iran to make clear gestures towards the resumption of a dialogue over the 2015 nuclear deal. The Élysée Palace says President Emmanuel Macron expressed deep concern over Iran's decisions to violate the accord. In a statement, the presidential office said it is vital Tehran returned into compliance and cooperated with the UN's atomic watchdog. Meanwhile, Iranian state media says Tehran has made it clear the only way to revive the deal would be for the U.S. to lift sanctions. It repeated that Iran's decision to reduce its obligations under the deal was due to the U.S. withdrawal in 2018. And the U.S. has decided to increase multilateral pressure on Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro to hold fresh elections. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made the remarks over a phone call with Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Blinken stressed the importance of fresh and fair polls. In a statement, Price said the Secretary of State pressed for a peaceful democratic transition in Venezuela. He added Blinken and Guaido also discussed urgent humanitarian needs in the country. And Blinken applauded efforts to find solutions and committed to continued U.S. support to Venezuelans. Moving on, the Australian High Commission has planted a Milwaukee forest in Islamabad to contribute to Pakistan's Spring Tree Plantation Campaign 2021. More details in this report.
Commissioner Dr. Jeffrey Shah and Pakistan's Climate Change Minister Zertaj Gul led the event. Speaking at the occasion, Dr. Shah said he hopes that this initiative contributes to making Pakistan cleaner and greener. He said Australia and Pakistan have long-standing cooperation on the environment and tackling climate change.
I hope these trees help regenerate not just the environment here in this marvellous city, but contribute to making Pakistan cleaner and greener. I want to commend the government of Pakistan and in particular Prime Minister Khan for championing the need on a global stage for climate action and environmental conservation.
The Japanese technique Milwaukee is used to create dense and multi-layered forests. It ensures that plant growth is 10 times faster and the resulting plantation is 30 times denser than usual.
Now, 3 people, including Panamas Consul, have died in Colombia after strong river currents swept away their car. Colombian authorities say the deceased include the diplomat's husband and a colleague. They said Telma Barria Pinzon was en route to the south of the country. Rescue workers have managed to recover all 3 bodies. The officials added that 2 others inside the vehicle survived. The Colombian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has sent condolences over the consul's death. On to the latest in business. European stocks are advancing for the 3rd straight day. Investor confidence was boosted by a senior Federal Reserve official's assurance regarding emergency support for financial markets. London's FTSE has climbed over 1%. Italy's FTSE MIB and Frankfurt DAX have also risen more than 1%. The CAC 40 in Paris and Europe's stock 600 have ascended nearly 1%. Earlier, all major Asian bourses traded higher. And the U.S. Commerce Department has issued final anti-dumping duties on aluminum sheets from 18 countries it investigated. The announcement followed the confirmation of the new Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo. The duties include up to 243% tariffs on imports from Germany and around 5% from Bahrain. Germany is the largest exporter of aluminum sheets to the United States and had the highest anti-dumping rate, followed by Bahrain. Brazil, Croatia, India, and Taiwan are among the other countries to receive anti-dumping duties. The duties will come on top of the 10% tariffs imposed on most aluminum imports by the previous administration. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.